Van build part 2. Here's a little preview of the completed build. We see Dylan here hanging out in the bench seat. He is practicing his ramen eating skills, just imagining what he's going to be watching on that television when we're actually out on the road. So here is the electrical box for the 12-volt electric system. We have our solar charger, we have our 12-volt fuse block, our battery, all of these things power our TV, our lights, and all our chargers and stuff, and it proved to be super useful on the road. So if you're not sure where to get started, the Victron Wiring Unlimited Guide is a super great resource. Everything from Ohm's Law to different wiring techniques and crimping techniques, what kind of installation you're going to need. All of that stuff is discussed in here. Another great thing to look at, Explorer's Life, DIY campers. I use a lot of these videos like this one here for installing the puck lights and wiring them together in parallel. All of these things really helped me be able to get this stuff together and actually do this. Vanland as well has a lot of great resources, so this is where I actually got my power system. I kind of got an all-in-one deal. As you can see, some of these are listed here, but I just got like one of the lower tier, everything included 12-volt systems because, I'm not living in this full-time. We're just kind of going out on the road for a few weeks at a time. So with this Victron lithium 12-volt system, you get this wiring diagram, which kind of goes over all of the different parts of a typical installation, things like using the Lynx distributor for your center distribution point, the BMS, which is going to regulate your amperage coming out from your alternator and help charge your battery when you're actually driving, other things like your smart dongles that are going to monitor the amount of voltage and power that's going through and how much is coming out. So to start off with this diagram, we're looking at this 12-volt, 200 amp hour battery. It's going straight into a fuse. Pretty much anytime you're going to be having any lengths of cable, you're going to want to have a fuse there. It goes into the main switch, and then that goes into the Lynx distributor. The distributor is then responsible for distributing power to each of our other components. That goes up to our solar charger, it goes to our fuse block, it goes to our BMS. The solar charger is responsible for regulating the power coming in from the 100-watt solar panel that's on top of the van. And for the rest of the time, when we're actually driving, that's when we're going to use the BMS to connect to this customer connection point on the Ford Transit battery. And what that's going to do is allow the alternator to supply 60 amps at 12 volts, so that's 720 watts. That's plenty of power for our system, and it's going to keep it charged up pretty much constantly. I don't think the system ever went below like 98% just because we were always driving or the solar array was always keeping the system charged up. Next we have our 12-volt fuse block. This is where we have additional fuses for each of our actual loads. This is like kind of the primary hub for all of the actual things that we want to plug in and actually get power to. So other things like our 12-volt sockets and USB sockets, our 12-volt fans in the ceiling, our lights, of course, and then, of course, the most important part, our entertainment center and TV and DVD player. So to start building the electric box, kind of starting with the components, laying them out on cardboard, tracing them, and following through all of the wiring on the diagram just so I could better visualize myself and understand how everything worked together. Then it was workbench time, and you can see here, like, I just kind of got my components together and started going through lots of tutorials and doing things like learning how to wire these puck lights in parallel and with a dimmer switch so I can hook them up to the 12-volt fuse block So I spent a couple afternoons building the box itself, planning out where the actual holes are going to go in the walls, getting the things to line up once you actually get them in the vehicle. So that's a lot of planning, especially since these wall panels are in different pieces and you want to make sure you can actually get your wires to where they need to go. So that brings us to the wood paneling and the installation. And there's some really great resources here on faroutrides.com where they talk about the importance of rivet nuts and kind of the differences between cross nuts and rivet nuts. These are threaded inserts that are going to allow you to use your screws with this sheet metal that lines the inside of a cargo van. Next, I didn't want to just have bare plywood on the walls, so I upholstered. I got the dark gray Nassini polyester fabric here. I also opted to get this closed cell foam padding. I got the 1/8 inch, and it gives a lot of nice give and a little bit more insulation. It feels really nice on the walls, so definitely recommend it. Next, here we are installing the first wall panel. This is after we've taken a lot of time to install our rib nuts everywhere with our rib nut tool. And then after that, we're going to use what are called insert screws or transfer screws. Basically how these work is you screw them into those rib nut holes, and then you can take the wooden wall panel and you put it up against the wall, press it into those transfer screws, and then you get a nice little indentation for where you need to actually drill through. And then you can take out your transfer screws and screw the actual wall panel into the wall, and you'll have a really nice fit, and you won't have to worry about the threads coming loose or anything like that. It takes a whole lot of time. You have to be very careful because you don't want to screw up any threads. I'd recommend putting your screws in by hand and taking your time, because if you screw up a thread and you try to force it, the rib nut might lose its grip, and then it's going to just rotate in place, and you're not going to ever be able to get that screw back out of there. You'll essentially just have to hammer it all the way through or force it out some other way or cut it out. The next big step was installing the lights and planning out the ceiling. So I got these 12-foot long pieces of shiplap. They were already coated in primer and ready to be painted. As you can see here, I used this black satin enamel furniture paint. It turned out pretty well. I took a couple of coats and applied it with the roller, but it looked really nice in the end. Then we started planning the cuts for the actual lights and the spaces for the air fans in the ceiling. Here we are back in the shop a month later after installing the floors, and this time we're carefully drilling out the holes for the lights, taking a lot of time to pre-drill the center hole and not splinter or mess up the finish that we painted just earlier. So yeah, as seen earlier in the video, I'm using these 12-volt dimmable LED puck lights. They're pretty easy to install because they have this nice recessed spring mount that you just kind of bend backwards and pop up into the hole, and they clamp on, and it works really well. Here we are pre-wiring the boards. I wanted to try to wire as many of the lights as possible before they were mounted on the ceiling. So in this design, everything is wired in parallel, and there's only one connection point between both of these sets of lights. That way, and you can kind of see, I'm showing my dad here that I will only have one set of wires to connect between the two boards once they're actually mounted on the ceiling, and I can minimize as much overhead work as possible. So the end result is kind of like this, like you see here in the picture. I'm using these Wago lever nuts to connect the wires, which is really nice. You don't have to use any solder, and they just clamp the wires together, and you can connect multiple in parallel very easily. And if you ever need to add another connection, add another light, you can just use another
lever nut that has more connector points. So yeah, here's everything kind of finally coming together with a little bit of assistance. Got the boards drilled up into the frames going across the ceiling. All of the lights again are wired in parallel. I just had to connect the left board to the right board, and then the input source is over on the left hanging down. That's wired through the dimmer switch, which is already mounted on the wall there. And then that wire runs back up and over the ceiling, over to our power supply box and the 12-volt fuse block. Here I am on a much colder day. Yeah, just a reminder, if you can, don't do this in the winter. It sucks. But here I am setting up some of the 12-volt fuse block fuses for the first time and turning it on, and behold, we have light. So mission, great success, very nice. So I think that wraps it up for this video. It turned out a lot longer than I originally intended, but yeah, stick around for the next one. We'll be going over the cabinets and the beds.